Pulavinaka, and welcome to For the Record. Mental health and the stigma surrounding mental illnesses has been a long-time issue in Fiji. There has been progress made in recent years in providing the assistance and support that people with mental illnesses need. However, there's still a long way to go. And joining us in studio tonight for discussions are the National Advisor on Mental Health, Dr. Nirvana Karan, as well as two caregivers, two people who live with members of the family who have mental illnesses, and they'll be sharing their personal experiences with us. I welcome in studio Thelma Nabukovo and Maricia Koroitanoa, who will be speaking with us over the course of the hour. But to get into it, the theme for this year, World Mental Health celebrations were celebrated with the theme Dignity in Mental Health. And to talk more about that, Dr. Karan, let's begin with you. When we talk about dignity in mental health, it basically talks about how people with mental illnesses should be treated. And for a long time, in Fiji, the behavior has been to treat them as less than human. Are we making progress in that front, in accepting people with mental illnesses?
I think over the last 5 years, we have made some progress, but there's still quite a long way to go. And I think the theme this year for World Mental Health Day was quite apt and quite appropriate and timely, that the World Psychiatric Federation declared that this year it would be dignity in mental health, psychological and mental health first aid for everyone. So basically it's talking about dignity, treating people with mental illness with dignity, with respect, because if we can treat everyone else with any physical health issues with dignity and respect, we should be according the same dignity and respect to people who have mental illness as well, because at the end of the day, it is still a medical condition, and we should not be discriminating or stigmatizing people just because they have a mental health issue as opposed to having a physical issue. And when they're reaching out for help, they should be able to get the help and the support that they need as other clients who have physical illness or any other issues would get.
Thelma, I'd like to bring you into the discussion. You're also a volunteer with the Community Recovery Outreach Program, or CROP, which helps families and people with mental illnesses. But from a very personal experience, what is it like when you have a member of the family who has a mental illness and you know they need help, but you don't know where to turn?
It's okay. Maybe Maricia can answer this one, and we can come back to Thelma.
Maricia, could you tell us what it's like having a family member who has a mental illness?
Well, for me, because my eldest daughter is diagnosed with schizophrenia, it's a bit challenging for me, because looking after her is a bit tiring and very stressful, but I begin to help her and look after her, and I know with family, they all need the support and encouragement, and mostly love. We have to love them, to take care of them, and I make sure that we treat her normally, like just the rest of the siblings.
But I mean, the family would be understanding and supportive. What about the rest of the community?
Okay. The first time I heard about this, her being sick, I was a bit ashamed of taking her in public places, because I know there's lots of stigma, people pointing fingers and talking behind my back, and that was a bit upsetting for me, and I was really hurt, because as a mother, I don't like the things like that. Treating my daughter like that is very, very unusual for me, because I know that she's my daughter and I don't want that to happen to her. So mostly that's why I went out, and I'm an active member of PG Alliance for Mental Health. I take course on mental health, and I just finished one course last few weeks on mental health, and I'm also a member of Mental Health Advisory Council.
Okay, we'll come back to these support groups that exist and which are very critical in ensuring that people get the help they need. But what Maricia has described is a general mindset of people when it comes to dealing with people who have mental illnesses. Is it a societal problem? Is it because people don't know how to react or how to interact with people who have mental illnesses?
I think it's a very big societal problem, because stigma doesn't happen with just one person. It happens in the whole community. It can happen at the workplace. It can happen at your smaller clubs or community groups that you're part of. So it can happen anywhere. And I think because mental illness is something that you can't see, like when you have a physical cut or something, you can see it's there and you know it needs to be bandaged or something like that, people get a bit fearful of the unknown. They don't know how to interact with people with mental illness. They don't know how to treat them or what sort of support they can provide. And usually in those circumstances, when you don't know how to react or don't know what to do, then a lot of times the stigmatization, the humor, the downgrading, the name calling, all of that starts coming out. And that's what we're hoping, that when we do programs like this, that we're coming out in the public and we're creating awareness in the communities to start talking about these issues. And the more we talk about mental health, the more we talk about mental illness and how to keep yourself well, we're hoping that people become a bit more comfortable with this mental health issue as a topic, and they're more comfortable talking about it amongst their communities, more comfortable coming out and asking for help, and more comfortable in getting the support that they need. But until we as a society get a bit more comfortable, become less ashamed and shy about these things, then it becomes very difficult for someone who's experiencing mental illness to reach out and ask for help because of the fear of stigma and the way that they would be treated.
And with that, we've come to the end of our first segment. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Good evening. Welcome back to For the Record. Tonight we're talking about mental health and the stigma surrounding mental health. Thelma, I suppose I touched on a bit of a sensitive issue earlier on, but let's talk about the work that you do with the Community Recovery Outreach Program, an NGO that helps people with mental illnesses.
Edwin, can I just...
Yes.
It's not an NGO. It's a Ministry of Health program for community rehabilitation.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a support.
So the ministry is sort of coordinating this,
Yes.
apart from the medical and technical assistance that's provided to patients. You now have a support group as well.
Yes.
I see. So when you have people coming in through CROP, how is it different from going to St. Giles?
Well, the Community Recovery Outreach Program is Fiji's only psychosocial support system. And people that come there are referred to us by doctors, nurses. They can also make self-referrals if they have to. My role as a volunteer is to help these people get back on their feet, so to speak. So if a person has problems with confidence, it's my job to facilitate that person's confidence building. If a person needs to pick up skills where he or she might be able to get a job, if we have the skills, we try to help them with it. I am in the program because I lost a sibling, my only sibling, to mental illness 5 years ago. He jumped off a moving bus. I managed to get training with the AVI, Anne Rao. She's a volunteer with AVI. And Maricia and I attended the same course. So it is my job to help people find their way back in life and help them do something meaningful instead of just existing and leading diminished lives.
What do they come to you with when you have people coming in? What are the common requests you get?
Usually they do not make requests as such, but the things that we work with is like like I said earlier, a big problem with most of the members is their confidence. Once they have been admitted at St. Giles Hospital, the confidence is shattered. For the very reason that many people are very aware of the stigma that's associated with mental illness. People cannot face family, they cannot face friends at times, they cannot face colleagues, and they find it very, very difficult, to just be themselves again. And the problem is stigma, and we have to help them fight it.
It's perplexing that you have people who are already dealing with these internal issues, psychological and mental issues, which is only compounded by society, and instead of taking the message out there about how we need to be helping them, they get treated, but then they have to be rehabilitated about how to get back on their feet again.
Exactly.
It sounds perplexing to me. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
And that's why it's such a big issue and such an important issue, because like you said, apart from the mental illness and the medical treatment that they get, the whole recovery process itself is such a huge part of getting back on your feet, getting that confidence back, going back to face your families and communities, like Thelma said. And when you add stigma to that mix, there's such a big wall that these people have to break down, in addition to taking care of their mental illness, to making sure that they're taking their medications on time, to making sure they're attending clinics regularly. They also have to go out and face and fight this stigma. And in terms of going back to work, in terms of their confidence level, Thelma rightly pointed out, a lot of our clients find it very difficult to regain that confidence to go back out into the community. And it's only because of stigma. And we can all help this. It's if only we can change our mindset and be a bit more accepting of these things, and put out a supporting hand or a helping hand, rather than looking down on them and saying you're good for nothing just because you've had a mental illness. And I think that's where this community rehabilitation outreach program that we started is so important, that this gets support and that we're able to roll it out nationally. We're beginning to do that slowly in other centers like Lambasa and Lautoka. We're slowly starting because this program is so successful. And maybe, Thelma, correct me if I'm wrong, but last year I think we did a little survey as well, just to gauge how the clients found this program, this rehabilitation. And we also did a survey on the carers and the families and the benefits they saw from it. And the results were really astounding. And like we had expected, they all found so much more support and help through this. And lately, I think Marcia and Thelma can talk about the carers group that they have started. So every 2 weeks, these carers or families who have their loved ones facing mental illness come together, and then at this community outreach program at the venue, and they get together and they share their experiences, and they talk about how they can support each other, or what's out there, what we can bring in to support these families to take care of the person with the mental illness and to support them better.
Marcia, have you had to spend a lot of time talking to extended family, relatives and friends, and explaining to them that it's not, you don't need to isolate us and ostracize us? Does that happen? Have you had to do that after your daughter was diagnosed?
Yeah, sometimes I have to share with them, because stigma starts from the family, members of the family. I can see that. I've noticed most of my relatives looking at my daughter, but I'm used to it now. So I think we have to educate them about mental health and mental illness, so that they will understand more about mental health.
Well, I mean, you make an interesting point that you're used to it. You've come to a point where you've accepted the reality of stigma. You've strengthened yourself against it, and you're carrying on with life. But Is that the right way to go about it? Thelma, when you have so much stigma and you come to a point where you say, look, things are not going to change, maybe we just need to have a tougher back, grow thick skin, and move on from there.
I mean, with stigma, Edwin, people need to be educated. We have to raise awareness that stigma doesn't do anybody anything good. Families suffer as a result. My late mother and I, we went through a lot because of my younger brother being picked out, bullied, harassed, and being beaten up by certain people for the very reason that he had paranoid schizophrenia. Society needs to understand that stigma does not work in anyone's favor. We must work against it. Because unless we do that, people cannot go back to work, they cannot go back to school, they cannot live their dreams, you know, because you're always pushed aside in favor of a person who's considered normal. So we need to educate the public.
Okay, and on that note, we will take another break. We'll be back shortly. Good evening, welcome back to the show. Our topic tonight is mental health and the dignity that people with mental illnesses deserve. Marisia, let's begin with you. I'm interested to know how difficult it is to get back into a normal life, not just personally, but for somebody with mental illness trying to find a job or wanting to go back to school or have a hobby and hang out with friends. Is it possible really? And how do you get to that stage?
Yes, it's possible, but with my daughter, she's very quiet. She's 28 years of age, and she stays home and she attends a community recovery outreach program. But right now she's staying home. She doesn't want to go. She just loves staying home. But I've seen the rest of the CROP members. Most of them, they got jobs. They go back and work. Some even go to university and school. And I know it's possible for my daughter, but I don't have to force her to go. Even to CROP, she stays home. When I ask her if she wants to go, if she says no, then I won't force her. I just let her stay home and enjoy whatever she wants to do.
Is it because she doesn't feel safe going out because she's afraid how she may be treated? Is that part of the issue?
I'm sure if she goes out in Suva City, I think she's a bit shy, she doesn't talk. But at CROP she feels comfortable because, you know, they blend in with others. Yeah.
So let's bring CROP into this discussion. Thelma, this is exactly what CROP is for. This is what you're working on, building the confidence of people. For somebody who's sitting at home right now who may have issues, or who knows a family member who has issues and is struggling to get back into society to do what they want to do, what are some of the steps they can take?
Well, they can come to CROP. We're based at the YMCA Youth Center in Mark Street. I mean, on Waimanu Road, sorry. We have a sister in charge. They can always come and see her and she'll fill out the referral forms. There's nothing to stop people from coming. The role of CROP is to help people become more resilient and pick up where they've left off. So if you have a loved one somewhere who has issues with mental health, don't hesitate to come down to CROP if you feel that, you know, it's a safer space for you.
Is it easy for family members to pick out that there may be an issue, there may be a mental illness, or is there a lack of understanding of some of the signs to look for?
Well, with mental unwellness, Edwin, a lot of people can pick out signs. You know, people become withdrawn. Some people cry endlessly. Some people just don't want to socialize. And when they see these signs, they know that there's something wrong. But very often, they do not want to go up to St. Giles for the very reason that we've talked about earlier, stigma. But they can always come down to CROP because we could always sort something out for them.
And I think just in addition to that, because of the stigma that was faced and the fact that there was only one institution in Suva. That's why we have done the decentralization process, whereby we have stress management wards in all the divisional hospitals, in CWM Hospital, Lambasa and Lautoka, so that people are comfortable going to the hospital just like they would for any other physical illness or any other medical conditions. They can go to these hospitals, to the emergency department or to the outpatient. They can go with their mental health issues, and there is a ward and unit that looks after this in there as well. So we have started to decentralize so that stigma is so strong, but then unless we change our mindsets, it becomes very difficult, because very soon the stress ward starts getting stigmatized within the hospital as well. So overall, yes, we all have to change our mindsets in the way we treat mental illness and mental health issues. But yes, we have decentralized. So if someone is not feeling well mentally, or if you are seeing a loved one who's not doing well mentally, then by all means go to these centers. And they can also go to their nearest health center, and the health center would know how to refer them to their nearest stations. And with Lautoka and Lambasa, we've also started little programs like this in the hospitals and in the community. So we're starting to do that, and people can go to those places too. So it's not only in Suva, because this is our pilot program, and we're hoping that we can roll it out everywhere. So we're starting with the training and everything. We're starting in different divisions as well. But if they're experiencing any issues, they can go to their nearest health center, and from there they will be referred onwards for help.
The very institution that is responsible for treating mental illnesses carries a stigma of its own. St. Giles is, as soon as you mention St. Giles, people are like, oh, the madhouse. It's a hospital.
A lot of times people have asked us, why don't you just move your location? Because everyone looks at St. Giles Hospital and looks at Raceville Road and says, oh, that's the madhouse, this is where all the loony people go. There's lots of stigma associated with it. But stigma is not about the location or the name of the hospital. Stigma is a whole bigger issue. Even if we move locations, we're still going to be stigmatized until and unless people's mindsets change about the way they look at mental illness, and the fact that mental illness can be treated, people can recover from it. Until we change our mindsets to that, it doesn't matter whether we're located on Raceville Road or we're located somewhere else, that stigma will follow us around. So, I mean, that's a good point you brought, but we get asked that quite often.
Previously, I remember there used to be cases of family abandonment. If somebody has a mental illness, they get taken to St. Giles, or they get left in old people's homes or state care homes.
And we really struggle with that. We really, really struggle, because these days people still come and say, oh, just because they have a mental illness, this is where they belong and they need to be left here. With every hospital, no one needs to be left in a hospital. A hospital is where people go to get well and then come out into the communities to live their lives. But a lot of times, still we will get some families coming with patients with mental illness saying, oh, we don't want them back. This is where they used to stay, and in the olden days, this is where they were housed. And we've struggled quite a lot, and every time we have that, we have to really educate the families to say, no, these people can get well. There's medications for it, there is treatment, there is support for this, and when they get well, their place is in their homes with their families, isn't it?
And I'd also like to get a family's perspective of how difficult it is, and what makes you decide to make the decisions that you do. But let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have more discussions. Good evening, welcome back to the show. We're talking about mental illnesses and the dignity of people with mental illnesses. Last segment we spoke about how some families abandon people with mental illnesses, their sons, daughters, mothers, grandparents are left at the care of the institutions. But for a family that is going through this issue. How hard is it to care for somebody who has a mental illness, and how much of a strain does it put on the family? I'd like to hear from you, Marcia.
Well, for me, well, my kids, the rest of the siblings, they were small when my daughter was diagnosed with the mental illness. And it was very hard for me looking after her and looking after my other siblings and also looking after my husband. But now that she's grown up, it's she can take care of herself now. But just a few things, I'll ask her about her medication and grooming. That's when I come in and try and help her with. But right now we always try and look after her and her siblings. They like to look after her, take her shopping, you know. I make sure she's taken care of because I don't want her to end up like that, those people who walk around in the streets. It's very sad to see them there, and just imagine my daughter can do that too if no one cares. So, and as a carer too, I have to look after myself too, and ask a member of the family to look after my daughter while I just take time out, have a cup of coffee with my friend, or go shopping, do something to relax.
Did it ever come to a point where you thought you couldn't do it, it was too hard, and maybe the state could do a better job of looking after your daughter?
Well, for me, no. I look after my daughter. My other siblings, they look after her, my husband and I, and members of the family. They're very nice to her. And I'm very grateful that she's well looked after. And she goes to crop. That's where she likes to go to sometimes, even go to the gym. They're very excited when they hear them going to the gym. They love going to the gym, doing volleyball and basketball and all those.
So these are some of the activities that CROP runs. Thelma, what else do you provide?
We have gym classes, like Mauricio said, where we do stretching, there's basketball, we do a bit of relaxation. Zumba when the instructor is available, or we have our own dance-offs, which we have on Thursdays. You win a trophy with your partner, so we're keeping tabs on who's winning, so at the end of the year hopefully we'll give the winners a prize. With me, my brother had other problems as well. Besides having his paranoid schizophrenia, he also had a problem with drug addiction and alcohol abuse. So we had a really hard time, Mum and I, trying to sort of care for him. Never was a person with a temper that was just unbelievable at times. When he lost his temper, Mum and I would have to just take off, you know. And it was one of the things that contributed to him being on the streets for a good part of his life afterwards, because whenever he didn't like things, he could just march off and then come back when he felt better. When Mum died, I found it really hard trying to handle him because he always wanted things done his way, and I was always conscious for the safety of my 4 children, because at times when he got really mad, there was every likelihood he could just do something untoward. I'm not saying that people with mental unwellness are violent. It's just that when they don't take medication, there is a tendency to lose their temper if they have things like paranoid schizophrenia, which my brother suffered from. But otherwise, Mum and I tried our best. We thought, we'd give it a go. And when Mum passed away, I tried to pick up where she left off, but I found that it was a big challenge for me because I had my family, I had a husband. And at times it was like I was walking a tightrope, trying to balance loyalties between husband, children, my brother. And he spent most of his time with friends, with me up at St. Giles, and with people he felt comfortable.
Did you have the support structure? Did you have the backup that exists today?
We didn't crop. Neville died the year crop was established, and I honestly, sometimes I cry when I think back and I say to myself, if such a system was in place, earlier, I don't think never would have taken the step that he did that day, because CROP is such a supportive system. People can just be themselves, they can socialize, they can just talk and just be free in that safe space. And I'm grateful that the Ministry of Health, together with the initial team that carried out the needs assessment, I'm so grateful that they implemented the program, because it is just so important that people get the support they need to recover in an environment that they feel is safe for them.
Did you at any point feel helpless and isolated because of the stigma and the lack of support that exists?
Definitely. At times I felt I was out on my own, because to be honest, I didn't get the backing I thought I should have gotten from certain people or from certain family members, because Neville was just singled out as being, a troublemaker, somebody who was worthless, not worth investing in. And till this day, I still have that feeling, I wish we could have done more for him.
Do you still have that fear for others?
Definitely. I mean, the current members, when I work with them, I make sure that every day I set foot in their office.
Dr. Karan, the issue of people turning away from those living with mental illnesses, how can the ministry and how can St. Giles help in that regard?
I think an important thing to bring out is that these safe space and these rehabilitation program that we've created, it can be done by communities as well. And if you look at it, generally it's the communities who spearhead these programs. And this is where we need to break down that stigma, and community members need to come up and create this safe, supportive environment so that these people can be supported in a healthier way. So a rehabilitation program doesn't always just have to be run by a ministerial organization or anything. Any NGOs, any mothers clubs, and all the community organizations, church groups, faith-based organizations, anyone can create the supportive environment, and we're happy to support that. But definitely we need more of this around the country so that people can go in and feel supported. And I think I would just like to say over and over again, it's not only this, we can create it in all our communities, in all our settings. We have halls and things, and like mothers clubs and things run their programs and things. We can include, if in the community there is someone who's having a mental illness or having mental health issues, they can be part of the program there as well, because sometimes some communities have their own sewing groups or their planting group. Why not include people who have mental illness and mental health issues into these groups? Because that's all rehabilitation. It doesn't have to be in a hospital only. It has to be, actually ideally it should be out in the community. It shouldn't be in the hospital. And I mean, that's what I would like to stress and emphasize, that if you have any programs in the community, reach out to these mentally ill patients and families who have issues. Involve them in the activities that the community is doing.
Okay, and with that we've come to the end of another segment. When we come back, we'll look at what the future holds. Stay with us. Good evening and welcome back to For the Record. We're just about done for the evening, but before we go, final thoughts from the panel. Marisia, where do you see the future of mental illness and the treatment of people living with mental illness in Fiji?
Well, the love and the support of the family can help them survive from whatever the mental illness that they are suffering from, and attending CROP, which is a family support network. They can get well because of a lot of programs that are given to them. Many of them got lots of beautiful talents that they can showcase, and That will help them. And some of them, even they can go back to school, university, or go back to work.
What would you like, Thelma, what would you like to see CROP being able to do in the future?
I'm interested in seeing CROP assume a more community-oriented approach where, again, the community takes charge instead of leaving things to the clinicians. We need to get people to realize that this is their program. Government has taken the initiative to start the recovery program, but the onus is on the public to come forward and take ownership.
And how much of a task do you have on your hands to make all of this possible and to maybe come to a day where we don't have stigma surrounding mental illness?
I think it's a very mammoth task, but it's just like chipping away at that block slowly. And I think Thelma's brought a very good point, and Marisi has brought the essentials of what we need to move forward, because the onus is on the communities, and it doesn't have to be a structured program outside only. Mental health is about eating well, exercising regularly, making sure you're taking medications if you need to, making sure you're going out there and doing all those things you need to make sure that you're mentally well. So it's not only about medication, illness, and issues, it's also about taking care of your general health so that you're better. And so even at home, if you put a program in place where you're exercising certain days of the week, you're making sure you're eating the right food, you're making sure you're attending to your wellness by attending any clinics as needed, taking medications, also, being part of a community group and doing all those things, that's still rehabilitation. So we can do it individually and we can do it as a group. And I think we've come a long way because we've just recently revived the Family Support Network, and they meet every 2 weeks. We've started some groups that address drugs and substance abuse, so some support groups for that. And I think to move forward, we need a lot of community support, because mental health is not just about, it's not like other physical illnesses or medical conditions where you just give medications and advise and that's it. It's about a whole lifestyle that gets affected, a whole family gets affected, and the community they live in gets affected. So how do we rehabilitate that whole process is where we need to let go of our stigma. We need to be more open. We need to educate ourselves on what are some of the signs and symptoms of the illness and where to get help and seek help in a timely manner so that we can support these individuals out in the community. So it's a big task, but we're getting there slowly with awareness, and we're hoping with programs like this that the public becomes more aware of mental health issues and people get more comfortable talking about it, and that they're able to come and get the help that they need, because the help and support is there, but we also need to reach out.
All right, with that, we've come to the end of the show. Ladies, thank you very much for being on the show, and the very best of luck with your work in the community.
Thank you.
I hope to have you all again on my show in the future. And with that, I will say good evening.